My daughter-in-law slapped me and demanded the house keys. But at the will reading, she didn't expect what the lawyer revealed. I heard the crack before I felt it. A sharp, dry snap that sliced the air like lightning through humid Florida skies. Then, smack. Camilla's palm whipped across my face, faster and harder than I ever imagined possible. My balance gave out immediately. I stumbled backward and crashed onto the cold tile floor, my knees scraping against the edge of the hallway step. Pain flared in my joints, hot and sharp, and I felt the warm sting of blood beginning to trickle down my shin. But the pain in my body was nothing compared to what bloomed in my chest. That pain was older, heavier. Camilla did not reach to help me. She stood over me, her eyes glinting with something colder than hate. Her voice cut into me with a venom I could not have anticipated, even after everything we had endured since Lucas passed. "You're still here?" she snapped. "Your husband's gone. Your son's gone. This house was never yours to begin with, and I'm done pretending. Hand over the keys, or I swear to God, I'll turn this place into your second funeral." Her voice bounced off the high ceilings of the living room like an echo in a mausoleum. I looked up at her from the floor, stunned. The smell of disinfectant from the mop I had used that morning still clung to my hands. My knees throbbed, but nothing could numb the sharp sting in my heart. I had held my son's hand when he drew his last breath. Now, here I was, trembling on the floor like an unwanted tenant. I braced myself, slowly rising, the pain in my knees threatening to buckle me back down. I glanced around the room, our room, once. The old wooden table I had bought secondhand during my nursing shift bonuses, the threadbare rug Lucas had picked out from a thrift market, the sofa where he used to rest his head on my lap when he was too tired to talk. Every object in this home carried a piece of me. Of us. Camilla scoffed. "What? You gonna cry now? You fall and expect me to care? Please. Spare me the drama. You're not a victim, Evelyn. You're a squatter. A ghost who refuses to die." Her words carved through me, each syllable meant to wound deeper. And if you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. I stood still for a moment, studying her. There had been a time, not long ago, when Camilla had called me Mom. When she sat beside me on the porch, crying about her fears of motherhood, holding my hand for comfort. That memory felt like a cruel joke now. "I was your husband's mother," I said quietly. My voice shook, but I held her gaze. "And I cared for him when you left. I bathed him, fed him through a tube, held him when he couldn't hold himself. You disappeared. Remember that." She smirked. "You want a medal for being a nurse? For wiping a dying man's mouth while draining his bank account? He died sad, Evelyn. Because of you. And if you keep standing in my way, you'll die just like him." She stepped closer, face inches from mine, her breath hot and sour. "So, one last time, give me the keys." I didn't answer, not because I was afraid, but because I understood something at that moment. Camilla thought silence meant surrender. She thought I was a fragile old woman, outnumbered, outpowered, and out of options. What she didn't know was that I had spent the past 2 months recording everything. That little teapot on the shelf? It wasn't just porcelain. It was a lens, gifted by Mr. Chang from down the street. The hallway mirror? Wired. Even the old cuckoo clock above the fireplace hid a micro camera I had installed myself, one trembling night while she was asleep. I bent down, picked up my worn leather bag, and tucked inside the small cloth pouch that held my bloodied handkerchief and my journal. In it, I had written every threat, every insult, every attempt she had made to push me toward a breakdown. I limped past her without another word. She laughed, a short, sharp bark of triumph, mistaking my quiet exit for defeat. I have seen death, real death, in the eyes of those I nursed at 3 a.m. I have watched men gasp for breath in sterile hospital beds while families stood in denial. I know what true endings look like. And this was not my end. That slap was her declaration of power. But what she did not know, what she could never know, was that justice does not shout. Justice documents, justice waits, and justice comes, even when it limps. They say grief reveals character, that mourning unmasks a person's true heart. If that is true, then what Camilla showed me after Lucas died was not grief, it was calculation. But to understand how it all unraveled, you'd have to go back a little. Lucas was the kind of son most mothers only dreamed of. He was kind, steady, quiet but strong. He grew up seeing me juggle 2 jobs, day nurse at the pediatric ward, night shifts at the county clinic. His father died when Lucas was 13, a hit and run. We never found the driver. From that moment on, it was just the 2 of us. He grew up fast, always insisting on carrying the groceries, fixing the sink, walking me to the bus stop, even when he was in college. When he met Camilla, I tried to welcome her. She was beautiful in that polished way, shiny hair, expensive shoes, the kind of woman who introduced herself with a firm handshake and an immediate critique of your curtains. I wasn't sure we would ever be close, but Lucas loved her. That was enough for me. He wanted to buy a house together, but his credit score wasn't ideal. I sold the little patch of land my parents left me, the one I had dreamed of retiring on, and gave him the money for a down payment. I told him, "Don't tell Camilla. I don't want her to feel like this house isn't hers too." He promised me it was just a loan. "One day, I'll sign it back in your name, Mom, when things are settled." I never asked him to. I never brought it up again. Years passed. They had a baby girl, Layla, my first and only grandchild. Camilla suffered postpartum depression, or at least that's what she said. She handed the baby off to me the second they came home from the hospital. I didn't mind. I was happy to be needed again. But the truth is, Camilla never really came back from whatever fog she claimed to be in. She disappeared emotionally, then physically, leaving for spa retreats, restorative yoga camps, therapeutic girls' trips. Lucas made excuses, always. "She just needs space," he would say. And then came the stroke. It happened on a Thursday. I found him slumped on the floor, mouth drooping, eyes terrified. I called 911. "Camilla?" She was in Sedona. "Digital detox," she said. No contact for 6 weeks. I sat by his hospital bed every day, bathed him when the nurse was busy, fed him soup when he could not swallow. I watched my strong, handsome boy turn into a man trapped inside his own body, fighting to blink, to speak. And still, Camilla stayed gone. She returned after 6 months, wearing new jewelry, a tan, and a scent I had never smelled before. She walked into that hospital room like a guest star on a soap opera. She kissed Lucas's forehead like a stranger, patted my shoulder like a visitor, and said, "We'll get through this. Together." He died 3 weeks later. The funeral was small, Camilla insisted. He wouldn't want anything grand, she told me. But I knew the truth. She did not want to spend the money. She did not want the attention. I sat beside her at the service while she dabbed her dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. Not a single tear fell. I know, because I watched her, closely. After the burial, she changed. Camilla began reshaping the house almost immediately. New locks, a home office built where the nursery had been. My room reduced to a corner closet with a folding bed. She said it was just temporary. Then she took my name off the mailbox. I asked her once, quietly, gently, why she was acting so cold. She smiled and said, "I'm just creating boundaries, Evelyn. You're grieving, you're imagining things." But then came the whispers. At first, they trickled in from neighbors, then from the church ladies. I heard Camilla say you were a bit confused lately. One of them told me. That you leave food out, don't bathe regularly, talk to yourself. Then came the more sinister claims. "She says your energy is heavy," another whispered. "She thinks you're, well, bringing darkness into the house." The word she used, apparently, was spiritually toxic. "Makes the place feel like a mausoleum," I heard her say once when she thought I was asleep. All her candles and prayers and old woman vibes. No wonder Lucas got sick in here. It stung. It stung more than anything. Because I had lit those candles to pray for him. I had whispered those prayers at night when his chest would rise and fall with effort, when I feared he would not make it to morning. She mocked all of it, behind my back, and worse, she twisted it into some grotesque narrative of me being a burden, a jinx, a parasite. To the outside world, she remained sugary sweet. At the church potluck, she brought casseroles and complimented everyone's outfits. "My dear mother-in-law is just the strongest woman," she would say, pressing her hand on my back like a medal she could pin or remove at will. "It's so hard watching her age, but we manage." People smiled, nodded, believed her. That was when I realized she was not mourning Lucas. She was erasing him, piece by piece. The man who once cried when he saw Layla take her first steps in the hallway, gone. The photos of us at the beach, replaced by abstract prints and throw pillows. Even his shirts, his scent, disappeared from the closet. She told me she had donated them to charity, without asking. I cried that night, not because she gave his things away, but because I could not smell my son anymore. It was as if he had never lived here at all. I asked her, one last time, if we could talk. If she could give me some space, maybe let me put one photo of Lucas on the mantel. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're living here rent-free, Evelyn. Be grateful I haven't moved you to a home." That night, I started writing in a small leather-bound journal. Not because I thought anyone would ever read it, but because I needed a record, something that could not be rewritten. Every word she said, every look, every slight, I documented it all. Because I knew what was coming. I had seen it in her eyes the night of the funeral. That house was hers now, and I was the last thing standing in the way of her full control. She was done pretending, and I was done doubting myself. She would not just remove me, she would bury me, with words, with lies, with shame. But I had been a nurse for 40 years. I had seen real death, and I was not afraid of her little war. Camilla might have thought I was too old, too tired, too broken to fight. But I still remembered how to survive, how to document, how to wait. And I was done staying silent. The words began as whispers, then they turned into mutters, then into full-blown declarations thrown across the hallway like dirty laundry. At first I thought Camilla was just hurting, that maybe, in her own twisted way, grief was curling itself into bitterness and lashing out in the only direction left, me. But no, grief fades. This grew sharper by the day. She called me a ghost the first time it happened. It was a Tuesday morning. I had just come in from the backyard, picking rosemary from the herb pot Lucas planted years ago. She was pacing the kitchen, phone in hand, FaceTiming someone I didn't recognize. I tried to stay quiet, to make myself small like I always did when she was in one of her moods. Then I heard it. Yeah, it's like living with a damn corpse. She just floats around the house, muttering prayers, lighting candles like she's some swamp witch. Honestly, it's depressing as hell. I froze. The rosemary in my hand suddenly smelled like nothing. The next time, it was louder. She stood by the window as I folded laundry, arms crossed. You know what people say about old people who outlive their children? That they're cursed. I'm starting to believe it. I mean, what kind of mother buries her son but keeps going like nothing happened? You're like a parasite, Evelyn, feeding off the memory of someone who actually mattered. That night, I cried in the laundry room, not because the words cut so deep, but because they came from someone I had once kissed on the forehead after childbirth. Someone who used to thank me for holding her baby through the night. Someone who had called me mom, even if only for show. The insults escalated quickly from there. Layla doesn't even want to hug you anymore. You smell like mothballs and death. You're like a bad penny, always showing up, always lingering. You're not a matriarch. You're an expired burden. She called me a walking depression, a charity case in a cardigan, a rotting statue. Sometimes, I would sit on the porch to breathe. She would lock the door behind me, just for safety, she claimed. But I knew. Then came the night of the gas. It was around 11 p.m. I had just finished writing in my journal, the only place I felt like I still had a voice. The house was eerily quiet. Camilla had gone to bed early, or so I thought. I got up to get a glass of water and smelled it almost immediately. Gas. Strong, sharp, too strong to be a leak. I rushed to the stove. Every burner was turned on, just barely. No flame, just gas. I shut everything off, opened the windows, and sat on the kitchen floor, my heart pounding. My first thought was fear, but my second was clarity. She had done this. She had counted on me finding it, or not finding it. Either outcome worked in her favor. 10 minutes later, she stomped into the kitchen, robe flowing behind her like a villain on stage. "Oh, for God's sake! Again? You left the gas on?" She barked, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. I stared at her, speechless. The way she framed it so fast, so ready, so rehearsed. "Are you trying to burn the house down? Or do you want attention that badly? You want sympathy? Pity? You're not getting it here." I said nothing, not because I agreed, but because my silence was the only defense I had left that wouldn't be used against me. I wrote it down in my journal that night, underlined in red pen. She wanted me to doubt myself, or die quietly. That was the night I stopped hoping Camilla would heal. I stopped giving her excuses, stopped saying, "Maybe today will be better." Because it never was. It only got darker. She started talking about moving me into a home. "I found this lovely place upstate. Peaceful. Quiet. You'll like it," she said, pouring coffee she didn't offer me. When I asked why, she smiled and said, "Because you deserve somewhere that appreciates you." But her eyes said, "Because no one will hear you scream up there." Every day felt like a new test of endurance. I would find my laundry hidden, my toothbrush missing, my tea replaced with salt water. One day, she turned off the hot water before my shower, and when I asked, she shrugged. "Guess the water heater's as old as you are." She spread rumors to the church ladies, told them I had early dementia. She forgets names, forgets she already told stories. She even prays to Lucas like he's still alive, she said once, sipping wine at a community dinner. They looked at me differently after that. Soft smiles, pitying glances, that stung most of all. Because I remembered everything. I remembered every insult, every manipulated silence, every passive-aggressive act wrapped in the paper-thin veneer of concern. I remembered Lucas's voice before he passed. "If she changes, you talk to Reed. Promise me, Mom." I hadn't made that call yet, not because I was scared, but because I wasn't finished collecting the truth. And I was. Now, more than ever, I understood. Camilla wasn't broken. She wasn't grieving. She was delighted. Because now, there was no one left to protect me. No Lucas, no witnesses, no allies, just me, and her, and the house. But I was not defenseless. I had my journal. I had my memory. And I had started preparing. Because abuse does not always come with bruises. Sometimes it comes in words, rehearsed, measured, poisoned. And she had given me more than enough. It was no longer grief. It was war. And I was done being the quiet casualty. The next morning, I walked 2 blocks to Mr. Chang's electronics shop. It was tucked between a laundromat and a shuttered bookstore, the kind of place that smelled like old batteries and solder. Mr. Chang had known Lucas. He used to fix our garage opener and never charged us more than a handshake and a smile. When I walked in, he looked up from behind the counter, surprised. "Mrs. Carter?" I didn't hesitate. "I need cameras, small ones, ones that record audio, ones that don't blink or beep or shine." He blinked, then nodded slowly. "Okay, you want to see the nanny cams?" "I want to see the ones no nanny ever finds." He didn't ask questions. He brought out a black velvet tray lined with objects that looked ordinary. A ceramic bird, a picture frame, a glass teapot with a wired base, a wall hook with a lens smaller than a nail head. He explained how they worked, where to place them, how to back up footage to a flash drive or cloud account. I took 5, paid in cash, and walked home with a paper bag that rustled like groceries. That night, I waited until Camilla took her sleeping pills, 2 white ovals she washed down with red wine while scrolling through Instagram, double-tapping photos of people she pretended to know. At 1 a.m., I I crept room by room, placing the cameras. The teapot went in the kitchen, facing the stove and island. The frame with Lucas's graduation photo went back on the mantel. The bird sat atop the bookshelf near the front door. The wall hook found its place in the hallway. Each one had a direct view of a battlefield. Over the next few days, I resumed my routine. I cooked quietly, cleaned quietly, and listened, and the house, as always, echoed back with her contempt. "You're like mildew," Camilla hissed once, passing by. "You stick to things that should be clean. I should have moved you to hospice with Lucas. You could have died together." I flinched, yes, but I smiled inside. Because now I had it. On record, word for word. Each night, I downloaded the files onto a password-protected drive. I labeled each folder by date and timestamp. I copied everything to a backup USB that I hid inside the lining of my winter coat, one she would never think to touch because, in her words, "Florida never gets that cold, you relic." It became a ritual. Every insult, every threat, every whisper of venom, captured, stored, preserved. But nothing could have prepared me for the ashes. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Camilla had gone silent for most of the day, which meant something was brewing. She only grew quiet when plotting. I was in the laundry room folding towels when I smelled it again. Not gas this time, but something sharper, like burnt paper and rust. I walked into the kitchen and froze. Camilla stood barefoot by the sink, shaking Lucas's urn. Not gently, not with reverence, shaking. The lid popped open. The ashes spilled onto the tile like spilled salt, gray and fine and final. I gasped. "What are you doing?" She turned, eyes alight, mouth curled into a smile I had never seen before. "Cleaning," she said sweetly. "You spilled him," I whispered, rushing toward the floor. She kicked some of the ashes toward me with the side of her foot. "Relax. He's not going anywhere. He's just dust now. Like you." I dropped to my knees, tears burning behind my eyes, and began scooping what I could back into the urn with trembling hands. That's when she said it. "You live with his ashes, so dying with them shouldn't be a big deal, should it?" The silence after her words felt like a vacuum. No wind, no sound, not even the hum of the fridge. Just her, me, and what was left of my son scattered like trash. She left the room laughing. That night, I backed up the footage 3 times. It wasn't just the words anymore. It wasn't just emotional cruelty. It was desecration. She had crossed a line, not with me, with Lucas. I cleaned the floor for hours, not because it needed it, but because I did. And when I was done, I sat at the kitchen table, opened my journal, and wrote, "She is no longer just cruel, she is dangerous. Lucas, I promised you I'd stay safe. I promised I'd be strong. So now, I will protect myself. The way you protected me, the way you couldn't, at the end. I'm ready." The next morning, I mailed a copy of the footage to Samuel Reed, Lucas's lawyer, marked, "Confidential, urgent." Then I called the police non-emergency line and reported that I was being harassed. Nothing dramatic, nothing accusatory, just a report on file. Step 1 of many. Camilla noticed something different that week. She sniffed at me like a dog catching a new scent. "You seem chipper," she mocked. "Finally losing your marbles for good?" I just smiled and wiped the counter. Because I had it now. Everything. And Camilla had no idea she had already lost. Justice, I had learned, does not always come with sirens and courtrooms. Sometimes, it arrives in silence, hidden in teapots, and saved on thumb drives. I met with Samuel Reed on a Thursday afternoon. We chose a quiet cafe near the courthouse, one of those spots where the coffee tastes burnt and the chairs squeak if you breathe too hard. But it was discreet, and the booths were deep enough to hide the war I was about to launch. He was already there when I arrived, the same worn leather briefcase beside him, his tie slightly loosened in the Florida heat. He stood when he saw me, and for the first time in a long while, someone greeted me like I mattered. "Mrs. Carter," he said, his voice low, respectful. "I got your package." I sat across from him and slid the second flash drive across the table. "That's the full backup. Dated, labeled, with audio. The journal entries line up. It's all real, Sam, every word. He nodded, already slipping it into a padded envelope. I never doubted you. But I need to ask this plainly. Are you safe? Not exactly, I replied. But I'm ready. We didn't waste time with small talk. I laid out everything, her manipulation, the gas, the ashes, the smear campaign. He listened, brows furrowed, one hand tapping a pen against his notepad. When I got to the urn, his jaw tightened. She desecrated his remains? He asked. Scattered them on the floor like coffee grounds, I said. Said I should die with them. That was the only time I saw his hand actually tremble. We built the plan there, between sips of bitter coffee. The videos were enough to warrant an elder abuse case, but Sam wanted more. I know Camilla, he said. She's clever. If we move too early, she'll spin this into hysteria. Say you're delusional, traumatized. She might even file preemptively to take power of attorney. I nodded. That's exactly what she's doing. He looked up. She already filed? I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded letter. A few days earlier, Camilla had shoved it across the table while I was eating breakfast. Her eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of someone who thought they'd just won. Official court notice, she said, petitioning to have you removed for mental instability. I spoke to a doctor. He'll testify. I knew it was forged. I knew that signature at the bottom didn't belong to any physician I had ever seen. But I also knew I couldn't react. I had taken it, nodded slowly, and said, if that's what you think is best. And in that moment, Camilla had smiled. Not kindly, not warmly. She smiled like a hunter watching prey accept the trap. She didn't know I had already laid one of my own. Back at the cafe, Samuel unfolded the paper, scanned it, and scoffed. She's bluffing. This isn't even notarized. And the doctor listed? Lost his license 3 years ago. I'll have our investigator confirm, but this won't hold. He leaned forward, voice low. Let her think she's winning. Don't push, don't resist. If she wants you gone, go, just not far. I smiled. She said she's changing the locks on Sunday. I told her I'd be out by Saturday evening. And will you? Oh, absolutely, I said. But not before I install one more camera. That night, while Camilla showered with the speaker, blasting some self-help podcast about boundaries and self-worth, I unscrewed the family photo frame above the fireplace. Behind it, I embedded one last lens, this one wired to a live cloud backup with a motion sensor alert. It faced the living room, the stage where she performed her cruelty with a twisted smile. I placed the frame back, aligned the edges, and smoothed the mantle like nothing had changed. By Saturday afternoon, I had packed a single suitcase. Camilla stood by the door, smug in a new blouse, tapping her phone as if already preparing her next post. Don't forget your pills, she said, and try not to wander off. I hear old people who disappear don't always get found. I gave her a nod, turned, and walked out without looking back. But I wasn't running. I was repositioning. Because sometimes, the most dangerous move on a chessboard is silence. And mine was finally over. The room was colder than I expected, not in temperature, but in atmosphere, like the air was holding its breath. Samuel Reed's office was elegant but modest. Dark wood, clean lines, heavy curtains drawn halfway to keep out the heat. I sat at the far end of the long conference table, my hands folded over a handkerchief, damp with nervous sweat. I had worn Lucas's favorite brooch, the one with the little gold sparrow, perched like quiet strength over my heart. To my right were 3 members of Lucas's extended family, an aunt, a cousin, and her husband, people I hadn't spoken to much in years, but who had shown up today as if hoping for scraps. Camilla walked in 10 minutes late, dressed in white. Not cream, not beige, white. As if she were the widow of a saint, and not the woman who scattered his ashes on linoleum. She sat directly across from me, legs crossed, jaw high, a smug half-smile curving her lips. She didn't acknowledge me, not even a glance. Samuel entered last, holding a sleek brown folder and a flash drive. Thank you all for coming, he began, his voice professional but taut. Today's meeting is to review the last will and testament of Lucas Carter, as submitted and filed under witness, notarized on April 17th, 3 weeks before his passing. Camilla perked up. Before we begin, Samuel continued, turning slightly toward me, Mrs. Evelyn Carter has requested that a brief video be played for the room's context. It is related to concerns regarding conduct during the final weeks of residence at 1123 Grove Street. Camilla shifted. Wait, what video? No one told me. Samuel raised a hand. You will have an opportunity to respond, Mrs. Carter, but given the nature of the footage, I ask that we maintain silence until its conclusion. He inserted the flash drive. The screen lowered, and the room went quiet. It began with audio, Camilla's voice, unmistakable, sharp as ever. You're a rotting statue. Just die already. Gasps. The footage rolled, scene after scene, captured from different angles, played like a slow horror film. Her calling me a parasite, telling me she should have sent me to hospice with Lucas. The gas burners, the cold laughter, and then the ashes. The room fell into a stunned silence as Camilla appeared on screen, urn in hand, shaking it like a cocktail shaker. Ashes spilled. Her foot shoved them toward me, her voice crisp and cruel. You live with his ashes. Dying with them shouldn't be a big deal. Someone in the room whispered, "Oh my God." Camilla stood up, eyes wide. This is out of context. This is edited. You don't know what she did before that. She provoked me. Samuel paused the video. Mrs. Carter, please remain seated. The full, unedited footage is available for the court, if necessary. But for today, this is sufficient. You can't do this. This is illegal, she snapped, turning toward me, eyes blazing. You set me up, you sneaky, bitter old. That's enough, came another voice. It belonged to a tall man in plain clothes at the corner of the room, Detective Martinez. He stood, flipping a badge from his coat pocket. Detective Martinez, Senior Investigator for Elder Abuse and Neglect, Miami-Dade County. We've reviewed the footage, interviewed witnesses, and confirmed evidence aligns with active investigation protocol. Mrs. Camilla Carter, you are under preliminary investigation for psychological abuse, threat of harm, and unlawful coercion of a dependent elder. Clearly often, Camilla laughed, high, bitter. Are you joking? You're taking her word over mine? She's senile. She doesn't even... Samuel raised the will. And now the reading. The room settled. Lucas Carter, being of sound mind, did on April 17th file this updated final testament. In it, he states, To my wife, Camilla, I leave $1, not out of neglect, but as legal proof that she is intentionally excluded from all property, assets, and insurance benefits. Her treatment of my mother and her absence during my illness leave me with no desire to see her rewarded by my death. Camilla gasped. $1? She whispered, voice hollow. Samuel continued. To my mother, Evelyn Carter, I leave the house at 1123 Grove Street in full, the associated savings account under Carter Family Trust, and my life insurance policy held with Alpine Zurich International Bank, amounting to $1.2 million. She was my caretaker, my advocate, and the only reason I had peace in my final days. I stared straight ahead. I didn't cry. Not because I was not moved, but because it was the first time in years I felt something settle in my bones. Not grief. Balance. Camilla slumped into her chair. That's not possible. He didn't have that policy. He would have told me. Samuel smiled politely. He opened the policy in 2017. Privately, he listed no contingent beneficiary. The account was verified 3 days ago by the executor's office. I'm his wife, she barked. I have rights. Detective Martinez stepped forward again. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say. Are you arresting me? In front of... Not arrest. Yet, he replied coolly. But I am detaining you for questioning based on documented threats and psychological harassment. You are not to leave the county. You will surrender your passport by end of day. 2 officers entered, as if summoned by wind, and flanked her. Camilla went pale. She looked at me for the first time all day. Not with anger, with fear. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I simply said, "I told you, justice may limp, but it always arrives." As they escorted her out, her heels clacked against the polished floor like punctuation. The room sat in stunned silence. Lucas's aunt muttered, "We had no idea." I turned to her. "You did," I said calmly. "You just chose not to believe it." The reading ended quietly. No cheers, no applause. Just silence. The kind that comes when truth fills every inch of space and there's no room left for lies. As I rose to leave, Samuel gently touched my arm. "He knew," he said softly. "He really, really knew." And I nodded, because of course he did. He was my son. Camilla did not go to jail that night. No sirens wailed, no cuffs clicked in dramatic fashion. The justice system does not always move that fast, especially when the abuser smiles in public and bakes casseroles for church fundraisers. But within 2 weeks, charges were filed. The footage, combined with my journal entries, witness statements, and the forged mental health petition, painted a picture even the best attorney could not scrub clean. Emotional abuse of a dependent elder, coercion, threats, tampering with remains. She pled not guilty, of course. She claimed the footage was edited and that I had psychological instability stemming from unresolved grief. But it was too late. The truth had already been seeded and bloomed in full view. The court moved fast on 2 fronts. First, the estate. The house title was returned to me legally within a week. The Zurich insurance funds hit the Carter Trust shortly after, which Samuel helped me move into protected elder accounts. Camilla was given 30 days to vacate the property. She spent 29 of them filing appeals. None worked. On the 30th day, she left. Not with boxes or bags, but with a single duffel bag, her real estate license revoked, her passport surrendered, and an official note stating she had lost all custodial privileges of Layla until further review. The judge called her behavior disturbingly calculated. That was putting it kindly. Layla was placed temporarily with Lucas's cousin in Tampa, a sweet woman who hugged me tightly after court and whispered, "We knew something was wrong. We just didn't know how bad." I looked at her and said gently, "When someone is being hurt in front of you and you say nothing, you already know enough." She nodded, eyes lowered. And I let that be the end of it. The other relatives, the ones who had come to the will reading with polite faces and greedy hands, now sent flowers, cards, messages of support and horror, and I had no idea. One of them, a distant niece I hadn't seen since Lucas's wedding, even knocked on my door one morning with a tray of muffins. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know what she was doing to you. If I had known..." I took the tray, smiled, then said, "You were there the night she called me a burden. You laughed." Her face flushed red. "I thought she was joking," she stammered. "She wasn't," I said, "and neither am I." I closed the door. I never touched the muffins. There is a special kind of silence that follows justice. It is not quiet, it hums with balance, with consequence, with dignity returned to the places it was stripped. I spent my first morning alone in the house, walking through every room. The kitchen no longer smelled like fear. The hallway no longer echoed with footsteps I had to track like prey. I went into Lucas's room last. It hadn't been his room in years, not since Camilla turned it into a wellness space with a Peloton bike she never used and a bookshelf full of self-help manuals with uncracked spines. I cleared it out completely. Removed every fake crystal, every smug quote in cursive font, every curtain she installed to block the Sunday. Then I repainted the walls, sky blue, the same color Lucas had loved as a child. He used to point to the Florida sky and say, "That's the color of forever, Mom." I placed a new desk beneath the window, facing east, put up shelves, books he had once loved, a candle, a framed photo of us at the beach. His urn, now restored, sat on a linen cloth in the corner with a bowl of sea glass beside it. I stood back and looked at the room. No ghosts. Just peace. It was mine now. All of it. But more importantly, it was his again. People ask me if I ever forgave Camilla. Forgiveness, I've learned, is not something you owe someone who has never asked for it. It is not a gift you give to make others comfortable. It is something that grows, in silence, if you water it with truth. And the truth is, I don't hate her. I pity her. Because when she scattered those ashes and said I should die with them, she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to the part of herself that still knew love once. And she hated it. I do not forgive what she did, but I have forgiven myself for staying as long as I did. I have forgiven myself for believing her when she said I imagined things. And that is the forgiveness that matters. One afternoon, about a month after she left, I sat on the porch with a cup of mint tea and my journal open beside me. The sun dipped behind the clouds, casting soft gold over the sidewalk. A mailman passed by and said, "You've got the most peaceful house on this street, ma'am." I smiled. "It didn't used to be." "But it is now," he replied. "Yes, it is now." I looked down at the last page in my journal. Underlined in red ink were the words I had once written in fear. She wants me to doubt myself, or die quietly. Below it, in steady final strokes, I added, "She failed at both." And I closed the book. I didn't want the money. When Samuel transferred the Zurich funds into my name, I stared at the balance as if it belonged to someone else. $1.2 million, enough to buy a condo by the beach, enough to disappear. But I wasn't going anywhere. This house, my house, still had stories to live in it, and I still had work to do. 2 weeks after Camilla left, I filed paperwork with the county and signed a new set of documents with Samuel Reed at my side. The Lucas Carter Legal Defense Fund for the Elderly. We launched with a $200,000 endowment. I chose the name not just for legacy, but as a quiet signal. Lucas had once told me, during one of our late-night talks, back when he still had the strength to speak, the law only works if someone dares to show the truth. Now, it would. The fund would cover legal fees, private investigators, relocation support, and emergency grants for elderly people facing abuse from within their own families, the kind of abuse that hides behind smiles and Sunday dinners, the kind no one wants to talk about because it makes everyone too uncomfortable. But I was done protecting people's comfort. I gave my discomfort everything I had. It owed me that much. The first case we helped was a 73-year-old woman whose grandson had stolen her medication, then convinced a doctor she had dementia to take over her estate. She cried during the hearing when her voice was finally believed. When she thanked me, I said, "I was you. I still am." Each letter that came to my mailbox, each voicemail left at the office, echoed the same haunting theme. No one believed me. And I always replied the same way. "I do. There's something you must understand. People think the elderly lose their power, that with gray hair comes silence, that once your children grow, once your usefulness fades from the household, you become invisible, furniture with a heartbeat. But what they don't know is this. Old women remember everything. We remember what you said when you thought we weren't listening. We remember how you treated us when we were too tired to fight back. And we remember how long it takes for a bruise to fade, even if no hand ever touched us." Camilla thought I was done, that I was weak. That age made me fragile. But age only made me patient. I outlasted her rage the way stone outlasts fire, slowly, without flinching. And in the end, it wasn't my screams that destroyed her. It was my silence. My notebook, my camera, my memory. Now, the house is quiet, in the best way. I light a candle for Lucas every Sunday, just like he asked. I talk to him sometimes, just a whisper or two, while I tend the rosemary bush outside. His photo sits on the mantel again, right above the old teapot that watched Camilla's worst days and outlived them. The neighbors smile more often when they pass. Even the dog across the street, who once barked through every night, now lies peacefully on its porch like the whole street exhaled. One morning, I received a letter from Layla. Just 2 pages, written in that crooked cursive only 10-year-olds have. She said she missed the stories I used to tell, especially the one about the little owl who never shouted but always saw. She was smart, Layla wrote, even when the other animals thought she was too quiet. I cried that night, not out of sadness, but because maybe Lucas's daughter would remember more of me than the silence. Maybe she would learn that silence is not weakness. It is waiting. I don't speak at big events. I don't sit for interviews. But every now and then, someone from the fund asks me to say a few words in the courthouse lobby, where we set up our help desk. Just a minute or two to welcome the new faces, reassure the frightened ones. I always say something like this: I'm not here because I'm strong. I'm here because someone mistook my silence for surrender, and that was their mistake. That's all I need to say. The rest, they feel. And now, if you're still listening, if you've stayed with me through this quiet storm, thank you. This wasn't just my story. It was every mother left behind. Every woman told to be grateful she has a roof over her head. Every grandmother insulted in whispers behind bedroom doors. Every quiet one who finally said, "No more." Let them hear it now, not as a scream, but as a truth. Camilla thought I was silent, but I was just collecting evidence. Justice doesn't need to shout. It just needs the right moment. And for me, that moment came. So now, it's your turn. If you see someone being pushed down, speak. If you've been pushed down, document. If you're still here, stand. Because women like me, we don't break. We become the storm you never saw coming. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If what I shared made your heart ache for the injustice, for the silence that was trampled on, or for a woman who had to swallow her pain in the very house she once called home, then please, don't leave quietly. Hit that subscribe button for Grandma True Stories. Here, I share the stories no one wants to talk about, but everyone needs to hear. True stories, from those who were forgotten. Stories of endurance, of quiet resistance. And justice, not loud, but right on time. If you believe that truth deserves to be told, that old women are anything but weak, that the most powerful revenge doesn't scream, it waits, then you've come to the right place. Grandma True Stories, where the voices of those once invisible are finally heard. Subscribe now. There's more I haven't told you yet.